What can you tell me, though, about going forward after Harvey sectioned those slides? Then what happened?
He wanted to find the smartest people, anatomists, neuropathologists. He was trying to assemble a team. You know, he was a well-trained guy, and he had more than he had a fair to middling amount of neuropathology expertise, but he wasn't a professional neuropathologist. There's probably a handful of those guys in the 50s, and he was seeking them out. And between seeking them out, he was also trying to dodge the government in the sense, and you say, what do you mean the government? Well, the government was represented by a guy named Webb Haymaker, who basically was a very well-known neuropathologist. It wasn't the NIH in those days, but the research branch of the government, he ran it. And Webb Haymaker was a very imperious guy. He was the guy who did the autopsy on Mussolini, and he invites Harvey down to meet a group of neuropathologists, neuroanatomists in Washington within a week, a couple of weeks of the death of Einstein. And he really puts the full court press on Harvey, saying, I want the brain. And Harvey's going, no, I'm keeping the brain. I got my own ideas. And Haymaker was not happy with that, but he had to settle for it. But Harvey now has a problem. Well, I don't relinquish, I have control of the brain. What do I do with it? And so he would find pieces of not so much pieces of the brain, he would take the slide sets, because he at this point had made 12 sets of microscopic slides, duplicate sets, 200 slides per set, and he started sending them out to various well-known neuropathologists, neuroanatomists, and he got nowhere. I mean, the guys at Chicago, von Bonin and Bailey, they go, we don't do this. We're not doing this, because it was considered a scientific dead end. You know, you're more interested in is what is the histology of a brain tumor? What happens to your brain tissue if you've had a stroke? To look at a one-off case of a genius, that's not in the standard toolkit of a neuropathologist. So he was met with resounding indifference. And what's the upshot of this? The first paper on Einstein's brain doesn't come out till Marion Diamond in 1985. 30 years went by with Harvey, in his way, trying to distribute these pieces of tissue without having it relinquishing control, trying to avoid the kind of crazy guys who must have been coming out of the woodwork, you know, trying to find out who was legit. And it took him 30 years to get the first.
That was Dr. Diamond from Berkeley?
Yeah, Marion Diamond. And she actually inquired of him, and he sends her a little thimblefuls of tissue, and she does the cell count, which is the way he's thinking is okay, if anything to be found about Einstein's genius, it's got to be something microscopic. And she says, well, you know, there's a higher ratio of glial cells, support cells for the brain, to the brain cells, the neuronal cells, glia to neurons, higher ratio. And it got a lot of play in 1985.
In 85. And so that satisfied Harvey that, well, I got the answer now.
Well, it got Otto Nathan off his back, because the executor's going, when are you going to publish something? So yes, I'm sure there was a lot of gratification. Harvey was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. He would bring the tissue to the guys who would do the study, but you know, as the academic game is played, they would give him credit for they make him a part author. How much he actually wrote on these papers, I have no idea. I know, having met the guy, he was intensely interested all of his life in what the brain showed, but that doesn't necessarily mean he could translate it into the kind of scientific findings that are publishable. And that was a problem his entire life.
I understand that exactly what the Einstein family didn't want to happen was happening now, sensationalism. Somebody was going to buy pieces of it,
oh, yeah,
offered to send money for it, and all kinds of crazy stuff.
No, he was, well, the cautionary tale, though, of course, is that in the autopsy suite, you know, Harvey is, as the story goes, Harvey has done the autopsy. The media, the New York Times is on that front veranda of the old Princeton Hospital. He's granting an interview outdoors there. And when he comes back, Einstein's eyeballs have been removed, enucleated. And the guy who did it was his ophthalmologist. Jacobs admits it. He says, I couldn't help myself. This was my patient, and he removed Einstein's eyeballs. No one knows where they are. But, you know, Einstein was afraid of that. The family was afraid of that, you know, you'd have this phenomenon of this guy was the genius of all times, and we want a piece of the true cross. Give me a, you know, and oh my gosh. So the family, but Harvey kept the faith with him. I mean, there were no interviews in the Saturday Evening Post. There were, as a matter of fact, when Einstein died, Life magazine sent a photographer down, and if you go on the net, it never was published, you can see the day Einstein died, and there's photographs of Harvey and the Ewing crematorium and the church. And probably the family said, we do not want this to be publicized, the death of our father to be publicized in Life magazine. So they're there, they're to be seen, but they were never, you couldn't pick them up in Life magazine of April '55. I think Harvey respected that. Yeah. I know he did. You know, there were no, you know, there were no sales on eBay. There were, not that eBay existed, but
There could have been. There could have been.
There could have been. We'll never know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not suggesting.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But